Let's begin.
Hey there, scary story fanatics. Welcome back to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. It's time for another love story. What? You stopped by for horror? Well, just because it's a love story doesn't mean there can't be an amputation or two. Settle yourselves in your love seats for a tale of beloveds and bloodshed, one that Doughboy420 likes to call The Swamp.
My name is Mark Wallace, and I had just moved from upstate New York to a little town in South Carolina. I had been offered a job at the new location for the business I worked for, Pine Ridge Oil and Natural Gas, or PRONG for short. And having an acronym that rhymes with wrong doesn't make things easy for us with the anti-drilling activists. Anyway, they opened up location at the newly discovered pocket of natural gas in South Carolina, and when I was offered a position, I jumped at the opportunity. You see, there isn't much natural gas or oil found in South Carolina, so when some is found, a lot of people like to jump on it like hungry dogs to a steak. Prong set everything up for me, and I moved right into town without any fuss or trouble. The town I would be living in for the next who knew how long was a little podunk place that both embraced modern life and screamed old-timey redneck. But with the towns I had frequented in upstate New York, it felt quite a bit like home. Aside from the location and the accent of the locals, everything was pretty much the same, and it felt like home. I got a little apartment on the first floor of an old house that had been converted into an apartment building. The only people I really knew in town were a couple of my coworkers, Bob Kent, a short, chubby guy with hair around the sides and back of his head, but was completely bald on top. He was a local that was born and raised in the area. Then there was Ricky Thompson, a small guy with some shaggy black hair. He was a young 20-something that had been working in the business with his father for a while, and had set off on his own and moved down here from Pennsylvania at around the same time as I had. Bob was married and had been for about 20 years, almost as long as Ricky had been alive, and speaking of Ricky, he packed up and moved down here with his girlfriend, Kimmy. I was the only one that was completely single, but that wouldn't last for long. Lauren was the waitress at a little diner that we frequented after work, and after stopping there a few nights a week for about a month or so, I gathered up the courage to ask her out. I was a sucker for her blue eyes and her short, black hair that evoked the style of Marilyn Monroe. She looked like a Hollywood movie star, but she came off as shy, a coy girl that always seemed to have a spring in her step and an innocence in her voice. She always giggled in the cutest way. Anyway, I digress. We planned to go out that Saturday to see a movie down the block at the local theater, but our plans quickly changed. The next day, Friday, the day before our date, one of our coworkers was found dead near Highway 42 at the edge of some swampland. This same small patch of swampland extended a couple of miles to the outer edge of our drilling area, and on the other two sides of the swamp, where a river and then even more wilderness was, with trees and thick underbrush for miles upon miles. Bob heard that it was some kind of animal attack, and Jimmy Lyles was torn up pretty bad. He didn't know what predator was the culprit, but this area was home to a few possible suspects. Coyotes, bear, even alligator had been found in parts of the state. Instead of going to the movies, all went on a triple date. Lauren and I were joined by Bob and his girlfriend, Geraldine, along with Ricky and Kimmy. Lauren felt safer with a bigger group, and with the recent death of someone so close by, I didn't blame her. But that night wasn't about that. It was about a night out at the movies. We watched an old black and white movie titled The Wolfman vs. Dracula, and it was cheesy as hell, but it was a fun time, and all six of us had a blast. After dropping off Lauren and giving her a hug goodnight, we planned to meet up and go out again. Next time, maybe under safer circumstances, we could go out with just the two of us. Following our date, the three of us guys decided to go pick up a few drinks and go watch the gas burn off from our work site from a nearby hill that sat kitty corner to the drilling site and the swamp. We sat there and watched the night crew scurry about as the fire raged on above them. We knew that a man had been killed by some forest animal, but we figured the fire from the flare stack would just scare off any predators. The trio of us brought some lawn chairs to sit in and enjoy our beers by the flare stack fire. Together, we sat for a couple of hours, joking and laughing, talking about times that we had in our hometowns. Ricky was from a little town called Halstead in northeastern Pennsylvania. I'd actually traveled through there on my way here from Schenectady, New York. It wasn't too long before our conversation turned toward our deceased coworker.
So, what do you guys think killed Jimmy?
Ricky asked.
I don't know for sure, but...
Bob began.
Never mind,
he said, looking downward. No? What? I asked, wondering what was on his mind.
I don't know. You guys will just think I'm crazy.
Bob said, still looking towards the ground. No, he won't, I assured him.
Yeah, tell us.
Alright. Well, I've lived here all my life. You guys know that. But for my whole life, I've heard stories about that swamp over there.
Bob said, pointing over towards the swampland near the edge of the drilling site.
What kind of stories?
I'm getting to it. Hold your horses.
Bob answered before continuing his tale.
Anyways, there's always been rumors of a monster that lives out in the woods. Some kind of lizard man. A 7-foot-tall beast that's half man and half lizard. It's got black fur and 3 long claws on each hand and foot.
Wait a minute. It's a lizard, but it has fur?
Yeah.
Are you sure it's not like an alligator covered in moss?
It's 7 feet tall.
Are you sure it's not a bear?
Thing's a lizard with fur. You think people are gonna mistake it for a bear?
Bob asked, kind of offended at the thought.
Sorry, man. I'm just saying. I'd be more inclined to believe it was a Bigfoot. But a lizard man? That's kind of ridiculous. Hundreds of people have seen Bigfoot, but a lizard man.
I'm just telling you what I heard. You asked and I answered. Next time I'll know to just keep my yapper shut.
Come on, you guys.
Sorry, man. I just think there has to be a natural explanation for it.
Yeah. I know.
Bob said, calming down. However, before any of the three of us could continue the conversation, we all jumped at the sound of rustling in the bushes behind us. The three of us waited in fearful anticipation, staring at the movement within the bushes, expecting some large beast to come barreling out of the forest at us at any moment. But instead, out scurried a little squeaking possum that quickly noticed us and scampered off in the other direction, back into the forest. The three of us sighed in relief, bursting out into laughter. We'd all been worked up over that story that Bob told us, even though a giant lizard man with fur sounded ridiculous, as Ricky had pointed out earlier. But in that moment, even he was a little scared. But in reality, there was nothing to worry about. Then, suddenly, the bushes shook with an even greater force, startling the three of us into silence, and out from the forest's edge lurked a giant beast. My eyes traveled from the ground up to the beast's wide body. It had thick, scaly skin that had a greenish, grayish hue to it, and all over its body were thick, matted patches of black or dark gray fur. Each foot had 3 long toes with curling, talon-like claws, and its legs bent backwards at the ankle and then curved back upwards into a knee. The beast's girthy stomach was completely obscured by the matted dark fur that curled upwards into the armpits that led into thick, muscular, scaly arms that ended with 3 long, clawed fingers. The monster had a thin mane of fur that was not at all like the majestic mane of a lion, but instead the matted fur clung to the creature's body and was slicked back due to its time spent in the swamp. It was the behemoth's face, however, that really struck fear into us. Its face was somewhat long, almost like an alligator, but the thing's snout was not as long. Its mouth hung open with thick saliva, dripping from curved fangs within its jaw, and the creature was all topped off with bright yellow eyes that sat within a wide, reptilian brow ridge. We all screamed and ran down the hill towards our cars that were parked outside the fence to the site. However, on my way down the hill, I fell and tumbled down before smacking my head on a large rock. The last thing I remember was the sound of screams, some human and some more like the screeching of an owl mixed with a wolf's growl, or more like the sound of a lion's roar on the intro to those old movies. Then, after all that, there was only darkness. When I awoke, I found myself laying on Bob's couch. His wife and children were not home, and he was sitting on his leather recliner with tears in his eyes. The news was playing on the TV in front of him. Local man mauled by mystery monster was plastered across the screen, and people were being interviewed on what they thought the beast could be, many of them bringing up points that Ricky had made. An alligator, a bear. But it wasn't any of these. This thing was indeed a monster. Then my mind returned again to Ricky. Wait, I said quietly to myself, staring at the TV as my friend's picture appeared on the screen as whom they assumed to be the second victim of the beast. No, what happened? I asked Bob in a sorrowful panic, tears coming to my eyes.
You don't remember? You must have hit your head harder than I thought,
Bob said in a slightly sobbing voice.
They checked you out and said you would be fine. You even talked to him. You don't remember?
No, I said again, my memory completely gone as to what had happened.
The lizard man got him, Mark. The lizard man killed Ricky. Tore him up and gutted him right in front of me. Made a feast of his innards and turned towards you. He would have been a goner too had it not been for the night crew scaring him off. He woke up just before the cops and ambulance got there. You really don't remember?
No. Are you all right? I asked, concerned about him for what he had witnessed.
Yeah, I'm okay, I guess. I'm more worried about you. You sure you're alright?
I think so, but I do hurt pretty bad. I answered. My body felt like it had been put through a meat grinder.
Well, that's no surprise. That thing threw you around like you wasn't nothing,
Bob said. I leaned forward, gripping the bandages about my side. Oh, got anything I can take for this?
Oh yeah, hold on just a minute,
Bob said, before disappearing into another room. While Bob was in the other room, my head began to throb with pain. It hurt terribly, and I felt like my brain was trying to break out of my skull, pounding on its bone prison within my noggin. Tears filled my eyes as my very mind felt like it would split in two from the pain within. I could hear a ringing in my ears, a ringing like an endless chime from within my skull. Then, suddenly, all went silent, and I felt peaceful again. The headache was gone, and so was the ringing in my ears. Then, suddenly, my head shot around at the sound of knocking on the door.
Here you go,
Bob told me, handing me a couple of small pills and a glass of water, before saying,
I'll get that,
and walking over to answer the door. On the other side of the door was the familiar, beautiful face of Lauren.
Oh my god, are you guys okay?
She asked, before even coming in the door.
I heard about what happened on the news, and I came right over as soon as I could.
How do you know where I live?
I just followed the reporters.
What?
Look outside.
She began, and Bob did as she said, looking out his closed blinds to find a few news vans and a small gathering of people congregated on the sidewalk in front of his home.
I actually followed Channel 6 down here.
She added, before coming over to see if I was all right.
What happened? Are you all right?
Yeah, I'm all right. A little sore, but I'll live, I said, before popping 2 pills in my mouth and swallowing them down with a few gulps of water. But I'd sure like to go home and sleep in my own bed. No offense, Bob, I said with a chuckle, gripping my side in discomfort.
I'll take you home.
You sure? I don't want to be any trouble.
It's not a problem. Come on. Let's get you home.
All right, thank you. I'll see you later, Bob. Have a good night.
Thanks. You too. I'll see you tomorrow, Mark,
Bob said as Lauren and I made our way slowly out the door. The two of us hopped into her car. Well, she hopped. I kind of just slouched over and rolled in. Then we headed off to take me home.
So, what happened?
Lauren asked, a good 2 or 3 minutes into our drive. I don't really know what it was. We saw this big lizard man, and I hit my head and I don't remember much after that, but I guess the thing killed Ricky and nearly killed me too. If it wasn't for the night crew, I probably wouldn't be talking to you right now. I'll have to go thank them tomorrow. After I get a good night's rest, that is. I feel like I got thrown around by a giant lizard, I said with a chuckle, before looking over to Lauren. I'm sorry. I must sound crazy.
No, it's all right. I believe you. Living around here, you hear all kinds of things,
she said, flashing me a smile. I looked back into her beautiful eyes and returned the warming smile. Then, suddenly, I felt the impact of something very large slamming into the side of the car, shattering the windows and sending us rolling end over end down the embankment at the side of the road before we finally came to rest against a group of trees near the base of the hill. I awoke after some time in even more pain than before. I noted that I would definitely have to pay a visit to the doctor after all these knocks to the head. And then, the next thing I noted was the absence of Lauren. She was nowhere to be found. There was blood everywhere, and small bits of flesh clung to the broken glass, leaving me to fear the worst. I crawled slowly out of the overturned car to find a trail of blood going off into the forest, and I began to panic.
Lauren?
I called for her.
Lauren, where are you?
I continued, but there was no answer. Only the sound of crickets chirping all around us. Along the trail of blood, I could see what looked like an arm, and then a shoe. Lauren's shoe. Tears began to fill my eyes, but before I could react, from the shadows, I heard the sound of heavy footsteps stomping down upon the earth beneath, steadily approaching me. I then looked up to find their source. It was the monster that had attacked me earlier that night. The same lizard beast had come to finish the job, and I feared that the creature would devour me in a matter of seconds. Then, from out of nowhere, a second creature came out of the forest, blood dripping from its mouth, from a fresh kill. The second monster was a bit larger than the first, in both height and girth. The second creature glared at me, licking its lips, with a long, split serpentine tongue. The thing was a lighter shade than the first, and the fur was wet with blood. I watched in absolute terror as the second beast approached me. I was helpless, and I would surely die. Then, without notice, the first beast, the monster that had attacked me previously, pounced upon the second, larger beast, biting down on the thing's neck and clawing at the other monster's body in defense of its food source, me. I decided to take this as my chance, so I jumped to my feet and quickly, as fast as I could, climbed up the hill on all fours and stumbled out onto the road, where I immediately took off, running back towards Bob's house, cursing him the whole time for living in the middle of nowhere. For what took us 2 minutes in a car, took me over 10 on foot. By the time I got to Bob's front door, I was completely out of breath, but that didn't stop me from pounding on his door in a panic. The reporters had all left after not getting a story out of any of us, and it was just me now, pounding on his front door like a maniac. He quickly answered my frightened knocks, and I stumbled into his house, slamming the door shut and locking it behind me before collapsing onto the floor to catch my breath.
What the hell's going on?
Bob asked me. There were two things, and they attacked us. Lauren's dead. Oh, God, she's dead, I said between sharp breaths, nearly bursting into tears upon the thought of Lauren.
What? There's two of them?
Yeah, they rammed Lauren's car off the road. My thoughts were interrupted by the deafening sound of ringing upon my ears once again, before it was joined by the immense pain of my skull-splitting headache. It felt like my brain was rocking around inside my head, and it hurt so bad, it felt as if my teeth would fall out. I looked over toward a standing mirror that sat at the edge of the room near the TV. I looked deeply into my own eyes, but they were not my eyes. Instead, I saw large, yellow, cat-like eyes. I began to gag, and it felt as though I would vomit as I felt my jaw begin to stretch, breaking and reforming as my teeth and gums began to protrude out of my lips, pushing outward to form a kind of snout that stuck out from my splitting-lipped mouth. I then felt my teeth begin to fall away in bloody drops on the floor as large, curved fangs pushed them out of their sockets. I could feel my tongue stretching as the muscles within it tore and contorted before the end of it split in half, filling my tongue with an irony taste of blood. In the mirror, I could see small flakes begin to form within my gum line as scales started to push their way out of my flesh. Soon, my skin began to fall away in bits and pieces upon the floor, my forehead being slowly replaced by a reptilian brow line. I raised up my hand and, from between my fingers, ripped 3 large claws, followed by 3 thick fingers that sliced through the flesh of my hands like a hot knife through butter, tearing through my hands and causing my flesh to drop away onto the ground, a pile of gore. In my chest, I could feel my ribs breaking and cracking to create enough room for the added girth of my torso. With each crunch and snap, I let out a small cry and a moan of pain before my vocal cords began to stretch, stretching out the note of my painful cries. Along with them, my sobbing voice turned from a low whimpering moan to a screeching growl. I could see all of this happening to myself right before my very eyes, and I could feel every bit of pain that accompanied it.
Come back to me.
I heard a familiar, calming voice say.
Come back to me, Mark. Please come back to me.
The beautiful voice pleaded with me. My snarling face lost its curl, and my large, reptilian lips relaxed as I looked around. I was shocked to see the calming blue eyes that I had fallen for at dinner. Lauren was there, alive and well. My weakened body collapsed onto the floor, and my pain changed, replacing one pain with another as I felt a burning stretch up my spine before spreading out like a spiderweb across my skin. I felt my own skin begin to melt and slip away from my newly formed body, and I felt my own spine rip through my back. Then I finally collapsed backwards onto the floor, slipping out of my lizard skin as if I were molting. I lay there, exhausted and naked upon the floor, covered in blood and some kind of embryonic goo, and as I took in a sharp breath, it was as if I were born anew.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. That thing is what happens when you let it take over. You can't let it win. You have to control it, or it will control you.
Lauren explained. I didn't know what to think or how to react, but I knew that monsters were real, and she was one, and now, so was I. I was confused about the situation, relieved at the fact that Lauren was alive, and also completely terrified of the implications of being a were-lizard. But I wasn't the only one.
What the fuck?
Bob said, completely dumbfounded.
Well, when it all boils down to it, at least poor Mark isn't alone anymore. Now he's in for the slime of his life, drooling for the one that he has eyes for, as yellow as they may be. But if you want more of that horror you love so dearly, drop by again next weekend to hit the road in search of evil. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.
Social media can be very unpredictable, especially regarding horror content. If this content gets removed, all new content will be simultaneously presented on various websites provided in the description to this video. Make sure to follow me in other digital spaces so that you never miss out on the terror. Also, if you like this video, make sure to leave a comment and hit the like button. It helps the channel a lot. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy what's here, consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you never miss an upload. Writing is a dream of mine, and it's all of you that make that dream come true.